Week 1 of the college football season is in the books, and there were some risers and some fallers as far as what it means for the NFL draft. And if you are interested in the NFL draft, that is the only thing we talk about on this channel, so consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more. Now, I have 4 names of risers from Week 1. Let's get into it. The first player I want to talk about is an offensive lineman, Khalil Benson, the right tackle out of Indiana. He goes 6'6", 310 pounds. He's number 67, and he is a redshirt junior for the Hoosiers. He looked good against Ohio State, and one of the things that was interesting to me is that despite the fact that this was Indiana versus Ohio State, sometimes what happens in those situations is offensive linemen will lose their aggressiveness because supposedly they are outmatched in athleticism. That was not the case with Benson. Benson held his own in one-on-ones. He was not intimidated, and he was aggressive every time that I saw him. This is not to say that he did not get beat on occasion, but that's going to happen. That's going to happen especially against athletes like those that Ohio State have, and he gave up a big play, tackle for loss on 3rd and 7, but on that play, the entire right half of the line collapsed, so it's hard to point directly at Benson in that situation. A positive and a negative for him. He has very good hand placement. I don't know that we're necessarily seeing the type of technical strength, the type of play strength that we saw last year from someone like Wanya Morris, but he definitely has the hand placement right. He does need to work on his feet. It was a little bit difficult for me to tell if his feet were in the wrong place or if he just stopped moving them. So, not that he's necessarily going to come out. He is a redshirt junior, so he's got, another year of eligibility. He might elect to come back, but this is definitely someone that I'm going to keep my eye on. Khalil Benson out of Indiana, but it begs the question, if he's playing right tackle, what's happening at left tackle? Again, to bring up Wanya Morris. Wanya Morris looks like he could be a starting tackle in the NFL. He did not play left tackle in college because the guy who did play left tackle, Anton Harrison, went number 27 overall. So who is playing left tackle for the Hoosiers? Joshua Sales Jr., a redshirt sophomore. I don't know too much about him. It is very unlikely that he comes out in the draft this year, in my opinion. But again, if Khalil Benson is worth keeping an eye on, so too is Joshua Sales. The second name I want to talk about here is Aston Jeanty, the running back for Boise State, who goes 5'9", 210 pounds. Again, this is a sophomore, so he is not guaranteed to come out. He wears number 2 for that squad. Now, he had 10 carries for 44 yards and a touchdown rushing. That, not entirely all that impressive. However, he had 4 catches for 109 yards and a touchdown receiving. With the direction that the NFL is going in devaluing running backs overall and making sure that they can contribute to the roster in more ways than one, i.e. pass blocking and as a receiving threat out of the backfield, this type of receiving threat running back will shoot up draft boards. An interesting thing about the game that he played, though, is that it looks, and this is a brand new prospect to me, I had not heard of him before, it looks like he has good speed, but not home run speed. But again, is that valued in the NFL? Now, how many Jamal Charleses are there and are there going to be? That type of speed is rare and elite, and it has to be paired with really good vision as well. And to sort of work on this question, I'll ask you another question. What was the last 75-yard rushing touchdown you saw? It doesn't really happen anymore. Ashton definitely has the speed to gash a defense for 20 or 30 yards at a time, and that's really all that's going to be asked of him at the next level. That said, I imagine he's a 4'4" guy, and being a 4'4" guy in a 210-pound body with the type of leverage that he has, all he's going to have to do is be plug and play in a system, and it will work for him. Now, I don't remember if I said this before, but Janty is a true sophomore, so he is not eligible until next year's draft. And though he is a new prospect to me, he is not entirely an unknown, as last year he had 156 carries for 821 yards and 7 touchdowns. But get this, all season last year, he had just 14 receptions for 155 yards. In the first week this season, 4 receptions, 109 yards, and a touchdown, leaving him just 46 yards short of his entire season of productivity last year for receiving. Now, the third prospect that I want to talk about, I have already made a video about entirely on his own, so be sure to check the channel out for that. Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback out of Colorado, 6'2", 215 pounds. He is a junior. He wears number 2, and he went 38 of 47, 510 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions against a team that was ranked 17th. The Buffaloes, by the way, Colorado Buffaloes, now appear to be a ranked squad. However, the one thing that is maybe ironic, maybe funny about this situation, Sanders had 5 carries for negative 32 yards. If you don't know, at the college level, sacks count against a quarterback's rushing total. 5 carries, negative 32 yards, you're not doing the old man any justice. It will be interesting watching Sanders going forward. So he was able to change arm slot a little bit in this game, nothing to the extent maybe that he's able to do. I have not seen too much of him play, and certainly not to the wild, wacky adventures of someone like Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers. And there were definitely a couple of throws where he really put some zip on it. There were others that were floated. Now, inconsistency is not something that is all that strange for a college quarterback prospect, but maybe it was in the game plan. Maybe he was floating some of those passes just to give his receivers a chance. Look, he went 38 of 47. He should have gone at least 40 of 47. There were a couple of those passes that were just outright dropped by his wide receivers. And I know they lost a lot of talent to the NFL, but that is not a bad TCU team. That is not a bad TCU defense. That is not a bad TCU defensive backfield. So Sanders doing these things is impressive. It is not fluky. And the rankings on Sanders are all over the place. Draft Buzz, I believe, has him as the 4th quarterback overall. Phil Steele, I think, had him 39th or 40th. The interesting thing with college football these days is he is eligible to make money in college. So will he come out knowing that he's playing for his father and he can make money? It is also sort of odd just from, I wouldn't call myself an old-timer, but the last time Colorado was really relevant was probably the early 90s, right? Late 80s, early 90s? That's when Deion Sanders was playing college football. Neither here nor there, just something that was interesting, in my opinion, to note. We're going to round this video out with another prospect that has a lot of eligibility left at the college level. It might be that none of these players end up coming out, and this video is all for naught until next year. But the final player that I wanted to highlight from week 1 was Johnny Wilson, the wide receiver out of Florida State, who is listed at 6'7", 235 pounds. He's a redshirt sophomore, and he wears number 14. Look, Wilson might play second fiddle to fellow Seminole Keon Coleman all season. Keon Coleman, who in my opinion may be wide receiver 3 in this draft class. But Wilson passed a couple of important eye tests against LSU. Number 1, he actually looks 6'7". It's always kind of hard to really tell what a prospect is actually going to, how tall he's going to be, what he's actually going to weigh when he comes out. Usually when a college wide receiver / tight end is listed at 6'7", it means he's 6'5". He looks a legitimate 6'7". He looks, and maybe I'm wrong, he looks a little bit like a completely new prospect this season. The number 2 eye test that he passed, Wilson looks much more like a wide receiver this season than he did last year. Last year, he looked to me to be one of these guys that's a few pounds away from being a tight end. One of these guys that's going to need to learn how to throw an inline block. Against LSU, he looked like a wide receiver. He does not. Last season, I figured he was destined to be a tight end convert, but he's found some new wiggle. Now, it was against LSU, and LSU is one of the most maddeningly sort of unpredictable teams in the NCAA. Look, they've got athletes to boot. Whether or not those athletes are aimed at playing organized football seems to be a different thing depending on the season. Anyway, Johnny Wilson went 7 receptions for 104 yards with a 14.9 yard average. So those are the 4 prospects I have from this week rising. What about you? If there's anyone I should be watching, let me know in the comment section below. If you decide to hit that like button, it really does help me out here on the channel. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the NFL Draft is the only thing that I talk about on this channel, so consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more.